Today we continue in the series, Grace on the Big Screen, with our third summer movie, 42, the Jackie Robinson story. It is a wonderful story and an opportunity for us to hear God's words that comes to us in movies. Jackie Roosevelt Robinson was born on the 31st of January in 1919. And this movie, 42, is set on the stage of baseball. Jackie Robinson took his position at first base at Ebbets Field on the 15th of April in 1947, the day the history of America and baseball was forever changed. He became, as you probably know, the first African American in Major League Baseball in the 20th century. And I love this because baseball is a story that is timeless in many ways. It's a story that is written across almost all the pages of our history. And so I appreciate in this message, or in this sermon series that Pastor Becky and I are bringing to you, that we take this summer and we look at those new parables. You see, Jesus used to tell all kinds of parables. He told parables that were told in lessons of sheep and vineyards and lost coins and rebellious sons. And today, I believe that those profound truths, those stories, those foundational truths of our faith are told in a modern way, which is through film, or at least it can be. And so I am so happy to be able to be the one to come and share with you this story of Jackie Robinson, 42. And especially that I can be the one that shares with you the story of Jackie Robinson as it relates to baseball. Because I love baseball. It is one of my favorites. Jackie Robinson, I have to be honest, I knew about Jackie Robinson. I mean, who hasn't, right? Especially if you're a fan of baseball. But I really didn't know a lot about the details of Jackie. So this sermon has been in some ways a discovery for me as well. As I said, I love the game of baseball. It is America's pastime. It is baseball, hot dogs, apple pie, and Chevrolet. Do you remember that phrase? There was a song, a commercial in 1974. James Hartzell, an American advertiser and copywriter, created his most successful campaign and one of what Car and Driver ranked as, quote, the best automobile commercial of all time. A commercial that has become one of the most significant commercials of automobiles in its history, that exemplifies our American culture. Baseball, hot dogs, apple pie, and Chevrolet. They go together in good old USA. And I couldn't remember the song, but I did remember the phrase, and I must have learned it from watching the commercials in 74, 75, and into 76. But it went something like this. Baseball, hot dogs, apple pie, and Chevrolet. Baseball, hot dogs, apple pie, and Chevrolet. Baseball, hot dogs, apple pie, and Chevrolet. Blah, 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 blah. I don't remember the rest of it. Even though the commercial ran for nearly 45 years ago, it has become ingrained in our memories as the embodiment of things that we hold dear in America, from sports to food and, of course, the automobile. A. Bartlett Giamatti, the former commissioner of Major League Baseball, I don't know if you remember that name, he wrote about the game that he loved and that he believes symbolized an intrinsic uniqueness that reflects the character of America itself. In 1989, not long before his death on September the 1st, Giamatti wrote this. He said, "To know baseball is to continue to aspire to the condition of freedom, individually and as a people. For baseball is grounded in America in a way unique to all of our games. Baseball," he said, "is part of America's plot, part of America's mysterious underlying design. The plot in which we all, he said, conspire and collude, the plot of the story of our national life. And he said that national plot is to be free. I mean, isn't that what we celebrate in this Independence Weekend? The freedom that we have when we threw off the shackles of the tyranny of the oppressive rules of Europe, England, and came to forge on this continent a new nation. He said that this freedom was the plot of our lives, and that plot was that we would enhance and compound even as this nation constrains our freedom by the laws by which we live. This is our grounding. This is our national story. This is the tale of America that we tell to the world, he wrote. Francis Richter, editor of Sporting Life magazine, around the turn of the 20th century, wrote that baseball was more than a game. He said that it was a great sport, representative of and typical of the people who practice it. One that stimulates all of our faculties, he said. It stimulates our mind, our keenness, our invention, our perception, agility, celebrity, our adaptability to circumstances. In short, all the qualities that go into making American men, back in that time, and I would add, women, the most highly organized, civilized beings on all the earth. I mean, he's talking like baseball is significant. And I agree. Richter, like Giamatti, speaks the same theme, and that is this, that baseball was the national pastime because it represented in some fashion the soul of America. And that's my hypothesis, at least in part, in this sermon today, that baseball represents the soul of America. So, it was on that stage, baseball, the soul of America, in a post-war era that Jackie Robinson entered. Now, in the movie that we saw Friday night, if you've not seen it, you should go home and watch it. A perfect weekend, this 4th of July weekend to do so. In the movie, there's a scene where Branch Rickey, who was the owner of the Brooklyn Dodgers, decided that he wants to bring up a player from the Negro Leagues to play for the Dodgers. And after searching through many, many candidates, he settles on Jackie Robinson. And so he invites Robinson to his office, and they have a conversation. He wants to know if Jackie has what it'll take. He asks Jackie in the conversation, "Can you control your temper?" A black man in white baseball. Can you imagine the reaction, the vitriol, he said? "You want a player who doesn't have the guts to fight back?" Jackie said to Rickey. No, said Rickey. "I want a player who's got the guts not to fight back. Your enemy will be out in force, and you cannot meet him on his own low ground." He said, we will be hitting, running, fielding, only that. When we win, if the world is convinced of these two things, Jackie, that you are a fine gentleman and a great baseball player, like our Savior, you got to have the guts to turn the other cheek. Can you do it? You give me a uniform, you give me a number on my back, and I'll give you the guts, said Jackie. Jackie signed a contract with Mr. Rickey to play for the Montreal Royals, a AAA team for the Dodgers in 1946. From there, then later, the next year, to be called up to the majors in 47. In today's lesson from James, we read, "Whenever you face trials of any kind, consider it nothing but joy, because you know that the testing of your faith produces endurance. And then let endurance have its full effect." Jackie Robinson was exactly what Branch Rickey had hoped he was. a man of character, of patience, and deep conviction. One of my favorite lines in the movie is when Branch Rickey is sitting in there poring over all of the files of the different potential players that they're going to call up. And he lifts up Jackie's and he sees that Jackie has played college ball at UCLA's. He's played in an integrated system. Blacks and whites together playing in college ball. And he was in the military, fought in the Army in World War II alongside white soldiers. But more than that, in my estimation, he looks at his paperwork and says, Jackie was a Methodist. And Branch Rickey said, I'm a Methodist. Well, even in fact, God's a Methodist. Now, I don't know about that. But I appreciate more than that, what he was saying is that Jackie is a man of faith. And you see that woven throughout the story of 42. And I read that as I discovered his history, and I watched lots of interviews with Jackie. And he talks about how important his faith was in the midst of all that he went through. Throughout the season, Jackie Robinson, just as James writes of it, faced many trials of all kinds, death threats against himself, his son, his wife, Rachel Robinson, who's 97 years old now. And Rachel Robinson, by the way, Becky looked over when we were watching the movie and she said, and you are going to be talking about his wife too, right? Because she sympathizes, maybe even in some ways empathized with Rachel, knowing that she sat so often quietly, and there she was at every game in the stands, rooting on Jackie, being the strength for him when he couldn't be strong. She'd tell him, just look up in the stands and look at me, Jackie. And he would be her strength. She was his strength, and she was as strong as Jackie. But they were strong because of their convictions of faith and their fortitude in their own abilities and in their relationship with one another. But not only that, Jackie was also strong because of the people who surrounded him, including Branch Rickey. One of the things that I did learn for myself as I studied this story for this sermon was I came to have a greater and deeper appreciation for who the man Branch Rickey was as well, for what he did. But more than that, what Jackie Robinson experienced and what he went through. In the movie, one scene that summarizes some of what Jackie faced is portrayed when the Dodgers go to Philadelphia, which happens to be, as you know, the city of brotherly love. Wasn't so much then. And they played the Phillies. The player-manager, a man named Ben Chapman, taunted Jackie Robinson with every racial slur that you could think of. And he incensed Jackie and many around him, including some of Jackie's fellow players, as well as those in the stand, but he also encouraged those who would do the same as he was doing. Chapman taunted him again and again mercilessly until the point that Jackie could hardly take it. He nearly breaks, and he goes into the tunnel that leads from the dugout into the locker room, and with great anger, he breaks a baseball bat, smashing it against the concrete walls. I wanted to show you the video clip of it, but it's got some language enough that I thought I'd just describe it to you instead. Branch Rickey comes from the locker room, and he meets Jackie in the tunnel. And Jackie, after telling Branch not even to come near to him, instead Branch comes close. And Jackie points his finger out towards that field, up those stairs, and he says, right now there's a sermon going on out there. And I had to stop the film and actually go back and play that again and again because I wasn't sure exactly what he said. And I thought, did he really say that? And he did. He says the line, a sermon is going on out there. What he means is that there is a sermon being played out on that field. Just like today there are sermons being played out on the big screens for us. In those experiences of our own lives, we live out the reality of the gospel. And Jackie did as much. Branch Rickey responds to him and says, "You, Jackie, don't matter now. You're in this thing. You're the one living the sermon." And that sermon is the wilderness, 40 days, all of it. Only you, he says. There's not, and Jackie responds, "There's not a gosh darn," except he doesn't use that term. "There's not a gosh darn thing I can do about it." "Of course there is," says Branch. "You can get out there, and you can get out there and hit, and you can run those bases, and you can score, and you can win this game for us. We need you. Everybody needs you. Your medicine, Jack." And with that, Jackie turns and climbs those stairs into the light of that field, and he does just that. In the face of the taunts that continue by Chapman, he gets a base hit and gets on first base and steals second and then takes thirds and then goes home and scores the one run that the Dodgers need to beat the Phillies that day. What a perfect story. Doesn't always end that way, but in this case it did. Why? Because as Romans 8:28 does say, God works all things together for good, for those that love the Lord and are called according to his purposes. I did some research on Ben Chapman. And Ben Chapman will forever be remembered by the exchange that he had with Jackie Robinson, which is sad because he was a good ball player. He led the American League 4 times in stolen bases and twice each in assists and double plays in 12 seasons. And playing for the Yankees, the Senators, the Red Sox, the Indians, and then the White Sox, he had a career .302 batting average. And for those of you who aren't purveyors of baseball, .302 is a pretty good career batting average. But he finished his career in the National League with the Phillies, where he was the player manager for that one season until he was fired in 1948 after the now notorious exchange. But not before he was made to participate in a photo op with Jackie Robinson. The owner of the Phillies made him do this. And I found it interesting, at least portrayed in the movie, and I couldn't find any evidence that said it definitely happened that way. But you'll notice that they're holding a bat. And in the movie, Jackie picks up the bat and hands it to him and says, "Here, we'll hold a bat so that we don't have to touch skin to skin." It is recorded that after this photo op, which seems to be reconciliatory, Chapman was overheard to whisper to Jackie, "This doesn't end it. You're still a expletive." And that's what we remember him for. And maybe that's a good thing, that we don't forget the trials. James 1:5 also says, if any of you is lacking in wisdom, ask God. I can't help but think that there's a part of me that wishes Ben Chapman had asked God. In fact, there's another scene in the movie where Branch Rickey is talking to the owner of the Phillies. And the owner has called Branch and said, "Branch, if you bring your team down here with that player, we're not going to take the field." Rickey responds and says, "It's up to you. You can choose not to take the field, but no, we're going to be there. And if you don't, then we're going to request that it be a forfeit, and that means we win 9-0, in case you don't remember." And then he goes on and he says, do you think God likes baseball?" The owner says, "What do you mean by that?" He says, "When you die and you go and meet God, and God asks you why you didn't put your team on the field that day with Jackie, that's not gonna be a sufficient answer." What he's trying to say to the guy is that God would not look kindly upon this, and he was convicted. That is, Rickey was convicted of that in his own heart, and he believed that, and he sought with everything that he was in the last years of his life, with the game that he once loved but didn't anymore, but instead was taught to love again because of Jackie. He used what influence and opportunity he had. He persevered with Jackie through the trials to change what was the reality. And we're given the same opportunity. That's what James means when he writes of it, when he says that if you lack anything, wisdom, that word there is something that means something deeper than just knowledge or understanding, but it is a gift that is given to us. It is God-given. It is deeper than even us. It is a sense of what is justice, what is righteous, what is understanding, what is of God. And God calls us to seek it. We can't create it. We can't do it, at least not alone. So I close with this, that I want us to be encouraged to know that Jackie Robinson did what he did because of not only who he was in his character, but because of whose he was, a child of God, and because of who he had in his life, his wife, Mr. Rickey, his family, his parents, at least his mother, who taught him all of those important lessons of fortitude, perseverance, of hope. And we have the same opportunity today, right here, to be those who in this great nation can truly make a difference. And know that when we face trials, not if, but when you face the trials of life, that God is with us. And that everything, as the scripture says, is working together for good. Even though we may not see it, that God is working those things together for us. And so I pray, if you lack wisdom today, ask God. If you need encouragement, seek the strength and the relationship, the friendship of others who can come alongside of you. That's one of the beautiful things of this text as well, is that when James writes of it, he's encouraging his people not to stand alone, but to stand together in the life and love that God has given to them. And so we're called to do the same. So I love baseball. I wish I could still play it. I can, but then I'll be really sore for the next week. But you know what I can do? And I just was mentioning this to Becky, and I asked Zach this morning. I said, all this baseball talk, what's really made me want to do? Is go home after church today and go out in the backyard and have a catch. So I asked Zach this morning, and he said, sure, Dad, I'm not sure if I have a glove. I said, we'll find you one. So we're going to go home today, and we're going to have a catch. And it's okay to kind of throw the ball around up in the air and catch it myself, but it's a whole lot better when I got somebody else to play that game with. And that's the truth for us as well. We're not called to follow Christ alone, but together. And to be those who overcome the trials of life together. So, my encouragement to you is simply this: play ball.